Every major faith contains a core tension, the chaotic reality of human free will colliding with the absolute rigidity of divine determinism. We experience free will locally as our capacity to evaluate moral actions and make distinct choices in the moment. Yet doctrines of predestination and omniscience state that the macro-level reality and its ultimate end are entirely fixed by a creator. Ancient philosophers and traditional apologetics have struggled for centuries to reconcile these contradictory states without diluting the power of the creator or the agency of the individual. The definitive resolution to this theological paradox is found in the advanced modern mathematics of set theory and topology. The conflict between localized choice and absolute divine election is a mathematically solvable topological equation. The Personas of Arithmetic is a sequence of 17 rigorous mathematical axioms that function as a contemporary theological sutra. This document maps the divine mind to the laws of set theory. Personas 9 through 13 specifically define the architecture of reality. These axioms establish the invisible constitution of axiom 9 and contrast it with the invisible dictator of axiom 12. In this system, a good set represents a filtered outcome specifically chosen by the infinite. By subjecting these 5 specific axioms to rigorous analysis, we can prove mathematically how divine sovereignty encompasses and dictates human choice. Persona 9 establishes that the docket of all judgments enforces an invisible constitution. This docket contains every individual, finite human decision and reality happening simultaneously. The stone check compactification is the mathematical law that forces infinite discrete sequences to be governed by a compact, regular space, a rigid geometric boundary. This compactification space serves as the invisible constitution. It is a completely regular Hausdorff space that dictates the behavior of the infinite sequences beneath it. This rigid boundary maps directly to the theological concept of divine omniscience, or the preserved tablet of divine decrees. God's docket of judgments is an unyielding topological boundary that finite realities cannot escape or alter. Divine omniscience functions as the compact topological limit. It has already enclosed all possible finite outcomes within its structure, making the knowledge of the end a physical property of the space itself. Persona 12 moves from the macro boundary to the individual node. We view ourselves as an invisible dictator of a constitutional narrative. This is the human condition. An individual entity perceives itself as the sovereign author of its unique path. Arrow's impossibility theorem proves that within finite systems, logical aggregation inevitably collapses into a dictatorial singularity. Because humans possess the capacity to evaluate moral subsets, we mathematically act as the dictator over our own specific subset of reality. This localized mathematical dictatorship is the mechanism behind the psychological perception of free will. Free will is a real but strictly localized condition. We are the sovereign dictators of our choices, but we are writing a fundamentally bounded narrative. The local human dictator and the macro constitution eventually clash, as seen in Persona 13. The invisible constitution creates an invisible gerrymander. The functional analysis of corona algebras describes exactly what happens when infinite systems interact with these finite choices. A singular state on a corona algebra is the functional analytical equivalent of a rigged infinite election. The overall measure dictates the outcome, forcing individual nodes into a predetermined region. The macro boundary swallows the individual node, overriding localized paths to create the invisible gerrymander. This mathematical mechanism maps directly to the theological doctrines of divine election and predestination. The chosen exist precisely because the structural boundary of reality guarantees their inclusion, regardless of finite human variance. Predestination is a mathematically guaranteed outcome. The macroscopic laws of the infinite constitution will always envelop finite localized choices. If salvation is a rigged infinite election, who is included in the final gerrymander? Axiom 13 concludes with a definitive statement: only those that are chosen exist. George Cantor's Mathematics of the Infinite shows that an infinite set possesses the full power of the infinite whole. In a transfinite system, the chosen set expands infinitely outward to consume every node in the frame. This transfinite expansion provides the rigorous mathematical justification for Christian universalism and ultimate reconciliation. Because the infinite part contains the same power as the infinite whole, the gerrymander of salvation eventually stretches to encompass every conscious entity. Universal reconciliation is the unavoidable, mathematically rigorous conclusion of an infinite divine filter. Human agency operates dynamically within a localized finite subset, but ultimate reality is governed by transfinite boundary conditions. This massive astrolabe perfectly represents the ultimate integration of the finite human scale with the infinite cosmic scale. Theological doctrines like omniscience and election represent the literal behavior of universal mathematical constants that structure reality. The laws of mathematics permeate the universe as the invisible framework binding the cosmos together. We exist, choose, and are chosen inside a mathematically perfect divine equation.